Hello, welcome to another episode of the PPM Playbook Podcast. I'm Laura Watts and Craig and I are going to be hosting today's episode. We're going to be talking to Simon Hall. He is the Chief Client Officer, and today we're going to be talking about training. Now, Simon, being so firmly wedged in the client side of things, is the perfect guest to talk about this with. This is also important to note that you'll notice that we've got a bit of a different background going on. We're actually filming this in Simon's front living room. We're in London, a lovely leafy part of London actually, and so there might be a little bit of background noise, cars going past, buses, and all the other sights and smells and sounds of London. Also, Simon has got two lovely little dogs, so both of which make an appearance on today's podcast. So enjoy. This is going to be the first of many that we do on tour, because we really want to get out in front of people, in front of our clients, and in front of people in the field who really know and live and understand the world of PPM and everything that it entails. So enjoy this episode, and we'll see you on the other side. Thank you. Welcome to the podcast. So Simon, I'd like to start with your background, if that's okay. How did you come into this position, but more importantly, how did you come to be at Verto for such a long time?
I've been here a long time. I'll start with that one because my job has changed constantly. It's never been the same thing. So I was one of the very first employees, started about 14 years ago. Right. And in those days, my job was traveling around the country, talking to people, showing them what the software is about, understanding what their needs were, doing the training, all of that kind of thing. And then over the years, I guess I've risen through the ranks, and now I manage the teams of people that do that. But it's important to me to have done that because I understand finishing late after training and traveling home, like being on site without necessarily the backup, everything's on you and all of those sorts of things. So I think it hopefully makes me in a good position to understand not only what the clients need, but what my staff need in order to deliver things properly. So yeah, that's that from there. And before this, I was in different kinds of IT roles and training roles and software roles. And this was just, at the time, a really good progression for me, a job that came up that I thought this is going to work really well. Yeah. And from the interview, I was like, yeah, these are people that I can work with. And I've known them a really long time. So yeah. I worked in a previous company with some of the people still here, so some of us go back like 20 years. So I'm not going to use the F word for family, but we've known each other a long time. We've been through a lot of stuff together. What attracted me to this company and what the software does is it's really like you can build almost anything out of it. It can support so many different things, and when I said before it's never boring, and the jobs change a lot, that's kind of the thing. We don't have one set of types of clients, we've across all sorts of sectors, and it makes it a really interesting challenge because you go to a type of business you've never been to before and think, okay, how am I going to help these people? And you don't necessarily start with a deep understanding of all their processes, but then because it's project management, they generally have the same sorts of challenges, and we can figure out how to sort of make the software work for them. So that keeps it really interesting. Yeah.
Craig, from your side, how do you sort of talk to clients before they have sort of started a journey with us, or how would you expect to any client to be introduced to training? Because ultimately that's what we want to talk about today, and Simon's team obviously delivers that training. But how do you introduce that at the earlier stages?
It's about letting them know about the importance of training, and that it's more than just here's how you press some buttons, here's how you use a tool. It's about culture change, it's about buy-in. It's about user adoption, it's about getting people on board with you, and so it's about having those conversations early and basically letting them know that this is something that you need to think about and you need to take seriously and understand how you're going to do it. And part of that is by getting them invested and getting them understanding the people that they've got, the teams that they've got, understanding the types of training that's going to resonate with them, how to get them bought in. So a lot of the conversations at an early stage is this is more than just training to press some buttons and to input some information. There's a much wider piece. That is just the first step. It's important, but there's a much bigger piece that's all about that user adoption, reducing resistance, getting people comfortable and familiar as well, I think is an important part of training. It's about setting them up for success And so those are the things we talk about earlier.
Yeah. And you mentioned that your job has evolved over time. So what about the team that you lead? How have you developed them? How has the structure changed? Has it all sort of evolved to meet our clients' requirements? You know, obviously similar needs in places, but vastly different industries. How does that work?
I think the first thing to say is it's teams plural now. I did manage a team, and that team were responsible for essentially everything post-sale. So doing the, figuring out what the tool's meant to do, how do we make sure it works for the client, get the training done, support them, all of the sort of post-sale stuff that's there. And over the years, what I've seen and what the industry's shown is that, aftercare is just super, super important. So we've actually split into 3 teams to make all of that work, essentially. So the 3 teams are essentially, first team will be client success. So what their job is, in a nutshell, is to get goals for the client, understand what it's for, why they got the tool, what problems are they having, how do we help them, and turn those into really measurable things. So rather than just saying, I'd like to get a bit better at project management, they can say, I want to have embedded this process, or I want 100% of my risks on the tool by June, or something like that, and we can actually set those up and make sure they work. One word that I do say a lot is accountable, because I want the client to be accountable for their success, but also we're accountable to help them get there. It's no good saying, here's a tool, good luck, we'll see you in a year when it's renewal time. We want to work with you over the entire year, make sure we're hitting those marks. And it can be easy in year 1 to say, these are the 3 or 4 things that I absolutely need to have, but then what happens in year 2, what happens in year 3, and how do we build that? And the client success team are really key for that for me. They build those relationships, set those goals, and those goals are always changing. We have different people coming in and out of the client, different needs, different teams, and all that kind of thing. So having that as a key focus is really important. We've got the client delivery team, which is all about delivering those actual services. So we'll build the tool for you, we'll train you, we'll make sure it's doing everything you need, we'll provide consultancy and all that kind of stuff. So that's a really key thing as well. And then the final one is the sort of support services team, which is all about how do we look after it when everything's built, when everything's up and running. If there's a problem, where do you come to? If you want to change it, where do you come? How do we keep it going over time? So there's distinct roles within each team to make it all come together. But what we're trying to do is say to the client from the off, we know what you need, we know how to help you. We also know that that's going to evolve over time. So we'll keep asking the question, okay, we've done that, what next? How do we help next? What's the next thing? And we want these relationships to be lasting. We want to get on well with our clients and ultimately move the product forward as well. So that's, in a nutshell, the teams that I manage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How important is it as part of the entire package?
I think training is vital. I would say that because I'm from a training background, but having seen it over the years and how it works, it's a really core part of all of this. But I think you need to take a little step back and say, well, what are we training on? What does training mean? People think, okay, I buy a tool, I train the tool, and then we'll be better at project management. But it's not, it really isn't that simple. One of the things that we find quite a lot is the people that are buying the tool, the people that understand what it's for, they're a smaller group of people. They're generally trained project managers, understand the language, understand why they bought it, know what the journey is, and how to get from where they are now to a more mature position in year 1, year 2, year 3. But that's only going to work if you bring everyone else with you. So if you've got hundreds of people using the tool, they all need to understand what it's for. And one thing that I talk about a lot is you have to train the why, not the how, not just the how. You've got to train them both, but the why is so important. And that's probably nothing to do with the actual tool, why you've got the tool, like that specific one. But okay, why do we need something? Where are we at right now? Why do we need something to get us further on? And generally it's the normal answer. Like, we're struggling with our maturity in project management. Everything's on spreadsheets, everything's on Word docs. We can't report properly. We're wasting time on copying things from file to file. Our presentations are taking too long to put together. It just doesn't feel very cohesive and very joined up. And what tools like ours enable you to do is to centralize everything and say, well, okay, let's define a way of working. Let's define the sort of data we're recording. Let's put all that centrally. Let's report on it properly and save time across the board. And that's what we're aiming to do. And yeah, that's really important to train, but you take a step back and go, okay, what are we doing? What is project management here? And we've seen it a lot with our client base and across the board, where a lot of the people running projects now, particularly in the public sector, are not necessarily trained project managers. They're, okay, you've been in the job, you're doing it, here you go, here's a system, crack on. And I think where it's really successful, where I'd always like to see people go, is to say, okay, I'm going to train you first of all on what we're doing in this organisation, where we're at now and what the journey is. Second, I'm going to train you on what core project management is, what we need you to understand. So what are tasks and milestones, what are risks and issues, why are they important, why is it important to us to have a standard for these things, and also set up a platform for where to go if you struggle with those things. And almost the cherry on top, like the icing on the cake, is the tool itself. So it's...
So you're not training for a piece of software necessarily. There's a whole process.
Absolutely.
You're training the process.
Yeah. It's the process, it's the why. And so by the time you get to the system, you already understand what it's for. Yeah. And that's a really good help. So when you start looking at it and going, oh, that's where I put this, that's where I put that, it makes it a lot easier. But if you just go straight into system training, oh, here's where you put your risks. Well, hang on, what am I doing with my risks? And why is it important? And, it needs to flow through like that. And then another lesson from training, which is really important, is it's not one and done. Sometimes people onboard really well, and it's a complete success. They follow all of that. So all the people that are in place when the tool gets put in get through all that training. But then someone that starts 6 months later, oh, there's the tool, here's how the tool works, and they've missed that grounding in the project management and everything else. And then also retraining. So you might have been trained, and then in a year's time, some of it's you remember because you're using it day in, day out, some of it less so.
Yeah. So
it's sometimes about going, okay, let's have refresher, let's build that in and train everyone every 6 months and every year. It doesn't have to be the full thing again, but just making sure that people's knowledge is up to date.
So there's loads of different levels there you touched on. So there's sort of like the training for the onboarding, the getting going. There's the training that's going to be, completely different for long-term adoption. You mentioned, retraining, refresher courses, things like that. Going straight to the tool might have had significant upgrades or updates or something like that you might need to come on and might completely change a process within your organisation. What about then user level training as well? Do you have, you mentioned some people are not even project managers at the start or really have an idea of how to sort of define project management, but they're still important to the project itself. So there's those people, that level of training. What about senior stakeholders, leadership? Do they come into it at all?
I mean, that's really key as well. And yeah, essentially, if the general project managers day-to-day aren't using the system well, it won't generate the right data, and if it won't generate the right data, the senior stakeholders won't get what they need from it. But flip that around, in order to set the data in the first place, you need the senior stakeholders to say, this is what I need from the system. And again, that's part of what the client success team do and what the client delivery team actually facilitate when we get there, is essentially saying, well, okay, I need reports on this, that, and the other. I need to go to these boards with it and figure out what all that data looks like. And you have to hit them at both ends, really. So although the senior stakeholders may not be using the system on a day-to-day basis, they may want to delve into the system, run reports off it, or use the dashboards, or figure out what's going on. Or they might just want a report emailing out, and they never ever touch the system whatsoever. But they have a crucial role in defining what the system actually does. So what are the problems that we have in the organisation? That's what the senior stakeholders need to look at, to try and fix and all of that. And quite often one of the biggest things is getting quality data that they can trust. That's a really big part of all of it. No matter what training you do, what processes you run, what type of business you are, that's quite a common thing to everybody. Like, can we trust the data that we've got? I've got a system over here that doesn't match with a spreadsheet over here, and this person says this and that's got that, and you waste so much time trying to pick through that. So even getting a baseline level of, we know what's in the system is good, we know we can trust it, and we build on that, and we can do cleverer things with reporting, cleverer things on processes and all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, coming back to the training point, you do have to train the senior stakeholders to a point, because if they're going to say, this is what I need from the system, they need to know what the system can provide. So you need to orient them, give them some basic training, understand what it's all about. Not to click here and add this in, but these are the sort of things you can get, and then that information can disseminate down the organisation, and we can provide it.
And it ties back to the why as well that you was talking about earlier. So when we're talking training, we're talking why, and that will change based on the people, the role that they're in at the moment. So when you're talking to a project manager, the why is different to some of the senior stakeholders. And so when you're teaching and you're talking through that why, you look at the senior stakeholders and you might find that it's the transformation director that's putting forward this because of specific reasons in terms of the programs that they're running. And so part of the change process and training is about letting people know why it's beneficial to them. And so making sure that the people, regardless of their roles, they understand why and what is in it for them. Getting that buy-in and letting them understand this is why as an organisation we are looking to push forward with this way of working, and this is what you're going to get back from it. And so that facilitates that buy-in, and that training piece is really important as well.
Yeah, just to jump in on that, it is important. It's sort of human nature when someone goes, right, here's a new thing I need you to do. And it's like, why do I need to do it?
Yeah.
Or why is it better for me? And we have seen over the years that if you just say to people, right, I know you were happy using your spreadsheet, but do it all here now. Why do I need to do that? It creates a report for someone that you never meet and a report that you'll never see, but just understand that we need it. You're not going to have great buy-in, and they're not going to love the tool overall. But if there's things in the tool that make their day-to-day job easier, and it's something that they think, actually, yeah, I like this because I can see what I've got to focus on. I can see where I'm at. It's easy for me to produce reports to my line manager. You've got to have all the way up the chain. You've got to have good reasons and functionality that helps them out.
Yeah.
So there's an overarching company why, which could be, we just need to get better at project management, but then you've got to break that down into, well, all the different levels of people. Why is it better for you? Why is it better for you? Why is it better for you? And then make all that flow together.
Yeah.
Sounds really simple.
Yeah.
It can be if you have the right conversations.
It's the conversations, and we're very much, delving into a bit of a culture change conversation here as well. I feel like, how do you set up an organisation to encourage a culture of learning and and set people up for success like that, because I think that's ultimately what how training is going to be successful, which leads on to this sticky adoption of a tool that's going to benefit the whole organisation. So how do you mould that or shape it or encourage it or...
I want to keep it positive, but I've definitely seen horror stories with what not to do as well as what to do, and I might break those a little bit. So ultimately, to create a culture of learning, it needs to be positive. That's the main thing. Like, here's a new thing that I think will make your job easier. It will help us as an organisation. I will put time into you to make sure you understand it. If you don't understand it or you have questions, you've got a pathway. You've got supporting materials, there's people to ask all the time. Like, it just becomes something that is a positive thing, not I don't know and I'm worried about it. I will flip on the other side. I'll never forget doing an implementation, naming no names, where they implemented a methodology at the same time as the tool. And there would be a joint training session. So they would start off by training the methodology, then I would train the tool. But at the start of every session, they said, we're going on a journey and some of you will not be here at the end. And I was like, wow, okay, that's probably the worst thing you can do in a training session, because people are already worried. Like, what if I can't learn it? What if it's too hard? Am I going to lose my job? What's it all about? And like, you've got to think of people as individuals. They all have different learning styles. They all have different stages of their career, different understandings. And when I said before that not a lot of the people are trained project managers, that's true, but that's not their fault.
Yeah.
So let's make sure they can understand it. Some of these concepts are not rocket science. It just needs someone to sit down and go, okay, this is what it is. And probably they know it already because they're doing it. It's just never been explained end to end. They've never been given the benefit of, like, this is what the language actually means, or the different methodologies and that kind of thing. So
doesn't sound like there was a lot of careful consideration on how people learn as well. I mean,
No,
certainly from a marketing perspective, we want to get a key message out in various forms across various channels, because people consume content in different ways. It's got to be the same, surely, if you're going to deliver some training.
Well, that's the thing. Training, you might think, well, this is how we're going to deliver it. We're going to do classroom style. I'm going to talk at you, and then you're going to go away having been trained. Some people, that works for them. Some people would rather just have all the steps and follow them step by step and do it on their own. Some people like practicals. Some people like reading. Some people like really formal training. Some people just, you want to be really informal. You've got to provide all of that for different people. Some people love videos, some people think, I'm not going to spend half an hour watching a video, I'll figure it out, and you've got to cover all bases and be patient ultimately, because there's not a right or a wrong way to do it. What the end goal is the main thing. And it does take more time, but anything good tends to. If you just do a quick, right, I'll get everyone on a Teams call, I'll train 100 people in 1 hour, here you go, bang. Efficient, not going to work, and there's a balance to be struck. It's a lot of organisations don't have the time to go individual around everybody to make it work, but the organisations where this works really well, they have internal learning portals where they can go, okay, here are the modules, here's how we do it. If you want to go back on what I've shown you, you can go and do it in your own pace. They'll have monthly drop-in sessions where people can come and ask their questions. They'll have essentially Verto champions internally who can say, okay, I know the system really well, ever got a question, just bounce it to me. There's all sorts of different resources you can have. But again, it all sounds like a lot of work, but if you want it to work, that's what you've got to put in there. You can't just put a tool in and expect it to happen. And as we said earlier, it's not a one and done. So you might get everyone trained and that's great, but then we've got to keep going and make sure everything's up to date. And your point earlier about the system might change as well, absolutely, but then the needs might change of the business as well. And sometimes it's a phased rollout. We don't use, there might be 20 things we're getting the tool to do, but we're only going to start with 10. We're going to put in 5 in 6 months and another 5, and all that stuff needs to be sort of trained out and understood. So
it's probably important to note at this point that we're recording this podcast early April, but we're running a webinar which is probably going to have already happened by the time this podcast goes live, on embedding or implementation and embedding of a PPM tool in an organisation. So some of this is crossing over with this. It's definitely worth having a look on our website at that webinar and watching it on demand if you've got the time. But yeah, it's obviously not the same thing. Training is one thing, but it's to an end, isn't it? It's in order to have successful implementation, successful embedding. So yeah.
There's so many parts to it. The tool needs to be built to work correctly.
Right.
But I've always said you could have the best tool in the world. If people don't know how to use it, you're not going to get the results. So think about what you want that person to have in their mind when they sit down in front of it. And it should be something like, I know what my job is. I know what I'm supposed to do with this tool. I know where to go to do the work. I know what's expected of me. I'm trained to do it. I find it easy. I find it quick. And I'll make it happen. And if those things sit there, then you're going to get good data, you're going to get consistency. But on the flip side, if it's like, I'm not really sure if I'm supposed to use that, am I supposed to put it in this tool or this tool? And I'm not exactly sure what you're asking me there, so I'm just going to put what I think you need. Or I've got a mandatory field, but I've no idea, so I'm just going to put a full stop in it and then move on to the next thing. There's two very different experiences, but the flip side is everything that goes up the chain. It's like, okay, so if you've got really good data, you're going to get really good reporting, and you're like, okay, this is really starting to help us as an organisation see what we're doing, what we need, and all of that. And the other side is, this data is terrible. This isn't working. And quite often the tool's blamed. Well, okay, I thought I could get good reporting out of this. Turns out I can't. But it's the people side. And as I've said before, it's about understanding that, being patient with that, not shortcutting it, and making sure that if everybody is trained and understands what's required of them, everything else will fall into place.
So we've run through a couple of pitfalls, I suppose, that organisations could run into when it comes to training. Could you talk me through what you've seen in the past? I mean, you mentioned that one where they've sort of painted a bit of a doom and gloom picture. What are the challenges that organisations see?
I think it's probably just maybe turnover of staff who know it internally can be a bit of a pitfall as well. So if they're taking on their training internally, they might have a couple of people or even one person that knows it, and it's their job to train everybody. And then if that person moves on or moves to a different department, suddenly they lack that experience, and then it's kind of like, oh, well, we used to be better, but we'll just have to struggle on, especially with budgets being what they are and that kind of thing. So, we're talking all about, get everyone trained, be patient, do it, but there's a resource to that as well. So that's why I think it's important to have that support and documentation done, and you've got an online sort of amount of help that people can pick. So, you know, we've got our knowledge hub, we do, you know, a lot of good clients do their own. But I still think you need people coordinating that effort. And if they don't know how to train, then they can bring us in to do it, and, you know, make sure that works on an ongoing basis.
So there's an option, is there? You get to, I mean, obviously we know we do it at Verto, but for people going out there right now and, you know, having a look around, shopping around for the right PPM solution for them, or kind of, you know, any technology, any platform that's going to help them solve a problem, really, is it a case of being aware of what training there is from that company, or is it, you know, a bit mixture of both? Do you need to make sure that you've got the manpower internally to
I think it's just, it's both. It's having a plan, and whether that plan is fulfilled by yourself or by whatever bit you're buying in, but the plan should be, buying any bit of software, or most things in life really, is know what you're buying, buy the right thing for what you need, but also get the most out of it. A lot of tools, you know, they might have 500 features in them, and if you're using just 2, but you're paying for the full tool, that's not a great position, you know. We've probably all got things in our life where someone could show us something, especially on phones these days, I never knew you could do that, and like, wow, if I'd known that, it'd be amazing. And it's a key thing for me that I want our clients to understand everything they can get out of it. You know, they could be doing these things, and even if certain pockets of people are using different bits, why not? If it helps you with your job, get on with it. But, you know, I don't want it to be a closed book of like, well, okay, I just use these little bits and that's enough for me. There's so many different things that are in the software that you could be using, and how we built it over time is client asks. So one client is going, it would be really good if I had this, and then it naturally flows that other people will be sat thinking the same thing. And if they don't know they've got it, then that's a shame. And I don't want it to be a shame. I want people to understand what's there and make it work. So ongoing training is really important. So, you know, if you are shopping for things, just have a plan. Okay, so who's going to be trained? How are we going to do it? How are we going to do that ongoing training? It's, as we've said a few times, it's not just a one and done. So make sure either you can provide it and you've got the resources, or the provider of the tool can do it, and that it is, you know, it's quality and it's designed around you, you know. I think that's the right thing.
Yeah,
exactly. And just to add to that as well, looking into establishing a lean onboarding process, because, you know, inevitably there is going to be people moving on, people coming and going. So having that repeatable onboarding process in place, so you know when someone comes in, this is how they're going to get up to speed quickly and efficiently, and it doesn't have to be an arduous task, it doesn't have to be overbearing. It just has to be efficient, and it has to be thought through so that it's going to have maximum impact, so that they can get up and running quickly. And then one thing I just wanted to circle back to, because this is important from the ongoing training and things like that, is the identification of champions. They will be the conduit between maybe the admins or the sponsors of the platform that you're going with. And you might find there's a group of people who join these online training sessions and maybe don't ask the questions that they potentially should do, but if you've got champions across the organisation that they can go to, they will ask those questions offline at a time that suits them, at a pace that suits them. And then following on from that as well, having regular workshops, collaborative sessions together as an organisation. I mean, we, Client Success, do user groups and sessions together where we bring the user base in and we have productive conversations, and I think that can often happen internally as well. So that you're bringing your champions in and people who want to join on these sessions, maybe once a quarter, twice a year, however often it is.
And that's across industries, right? So
it doesn't have to be just for a tool. It's that continued share learning, right? That growth. And you mentioned not long ago that there was an element of something that maybe someone didn't know they could do until they heard it in passing, or they saw a report that had a certain element on it that they've never sort of thought to do, and that information can be passed through a lot easier with champions and with a collaborative process where people are joining those user groups and talking together often.
How did it work for you, Craig? Because you have been client-side. You actually learnt Verto, not in Verto, but when you were using Verto as a client. How did training happen?
So, to try and keep it fairly short, it was a combination of a lot of things. It wasn't just come in for a couple of hours and have a training session and off you go. It was about being brought into the process early, to be informed about what's happening, why the change is happening, that wider piece, that culture change, that then led into some training sessions that we had where we was basically taught why this is happening, and maybe less so training and more of an education piece in terms of why it's happening, moving into the this is how you use a tool and things like that. But then out the other side of that was a lot of self-learning opportunities. There was information that we could get at our own time that suited us. We even introduced an introduction to project management half-day training session, which is exactly to your point, Simon, in terms of not just getting them up to speed on why they're using the tool, but what is project management? But more importantly, what does it mean for our organisation? And I think that was vital, because that connected the dots between what they saw in the system, what was being asked of them, and what the organisation expects. So what does the organisation think from a project management perspective? What do you think about from a risk management in an organisation? Risk appetite will change from client to client, from organisation to organisation. What does that mean for you? And so that personal experience really did connect the dots, so that when it came down to this is the tool and this is how it's used, we was 80% there already, because we had been brought in, we had been taken on that journey, and this is, okay, so now you've seen all of this, now you've gone through that, this is it visualized for you in a tool, and this is where those elements of risk are and things like that. But then one final point was about having contextual help throughout the tool. So it's not just about having a drop-in session or having a chat with the champion or sitting in a room for half a day and taking notes and reviewing the presentation later that night. It was on-hand support as and when you needed it. So when I went to record risks and manage risks, there was some support areas that I can very quickly click on that would take me to the risk approach or framework for the organisation that I was working for. So I instantly understood what the category of economical or delivery or strategic meant, just as an example, right? And so having those little bits of dynamic help and support functions throughout the tool just made it easier for me to quickly get up to speed based on things that maybe I've been told 6 months ago or 3 months ago. I've not been to a refresher session yet, and I've just got that information above, because let's be honest, you're juggling 3, 4, 5 projects at a time. And so sometimes there's lots of information to take in, and having that sprinkle of help throughout that you can just instantly get when you need it was really valuable for me too.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. Okay, so finally, really, I guess this is just it is definitely the last question, and rightly so. How do you measure the success of training? So how do you know when it's worked? Is there an end?
I mean, you can measure it, and there is no end, because you're always going to have new people, you're always going to have new processes and new things to learn. So yeah, if you think training's done, that's the wrong attitude. Think it's an ongoing thing. You should always be learning and all of that. And measuring it, I think there's 2 ways really. One is by asking. So get feedback from users. Do people understand it? Do they feel like they understand it? Yeah. And that can be anonymized. You can do it in different ways, but always ask. If you might have done training the same way forever, it might work, it might not work. It might work for one group and not another group. And as we talked before, different people have different learning styles, so they might be like, okay, this works for one group but not another. So just ask. That's not rocket science. Yeah. And then the other thing is quality of what's in the system. If you're getting good data and it's all holding together and it's working, then yeah, the training's happening and the output speaks for itself. So a combination of those 2 things would be my answer.
Yeah, they're definitely the biggest elements. And looking at the mistakes that are being made, or are they understanding the brief when it comes down to putting that pen to paper, so to speak, in terms of the system. You'll notice if your training's gone well, you'll get good feedback. You'll notice errors and mistakes should decrease. The quality and the trust that you have in the information will increase, and so they're the 2 key measures that I see as well. So, and
I guess ultimately the long game is: are you making the savings that you need to make? Are you making the money you need to make? Are you saving the time that you need to save?
From a training perspective, I see it as efficiency, right? Are they doing better at their job as a result of what's happened? Have they been brought along that journey, and are they improving? Are projects more successful, or is management information cleaner, serving its purpose? Are you getting everything you need? And those are some other ways in which you can define success as well.
Yeah. And finally, if you've got good support, you will see the kind of questions you're getting asked, and if you're like, hang on, we covered this in training, it obviously hasn't gone in, there might be a different way to do the training. But there's just keeping all those things in play are the right thing. So yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much. Thank you to both of the lovely dogs that have joined us today.
Yeah.
Nora and
Noodles. Yeah.
But yeah, it's been great to talk to you both. And do follow us on YouTube. We're also going to put this podcast out on Spotify. And we will be publishing loads of little snippets across LinkedIn to encourage you to do so. So lovely. See you all again and see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.